Hi everybody, my name is Sean Butler and we're here today at the EduTech 2021 conference. I'm speaking to you today about the Teaching Excellence Program, which is a program of a new organisation called the Victorian Academy of Teaching and Leadership, which will open in 2022 in Victoria in Australia. I'm aware that this is an international conference. For me, I'm here in Melbourne in Victoria, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I'm sitting today, which is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present and emerging. And wherever we are around the world watching this video recording, we'll be on First Nations land, wherever that is. So it's really important we acknowledge that and pay respects to elders everywhere in all of our communities. So a bit more about me. As well as working in the Teaching Excellence Program and setting that program up for 2022, I'm also a teacher by training. My background is as an English and humanities teacher, particularly in history, and I'm also a school principal. So in addition to working in the Teaching Excellence Program, I'm the co-principal at Preston High School, which is a new school that opened in 2019 in Melbourne. I've got a real passion for education and educational leadership, and I love being a principal and a teacher, working with young people every day and working with staff every day as well, with teachers in schools. One of the really exciting things I'm doing though at the moment is working with the Bastow Institute of Educational Leadership in setting up the Teaching Excellence Program as part of the Victorian Academy of Teaching and Leadership. The Academy will open in 2022, as I mentioned already. So why are we here at EduTech 2021 and why am I talking to you about professional learning? Well, professional learning for our best teachers is a journey worth taking, and it's something that we don't always have a frame around professional learning in terms of thinking about it for our best teachers. So when we're here at EduTech 2021, you're all here because you have an interest in education and education technology in particular. But you're also here because you have an interest in how we work with young people and our teachers in schools. So thinking about how we can connect our learning communities in schools through technology and through the professional learning we engage with is a really important way of thinking about how we can connect our moral purpose with what we're doing here today in the education technology sector. So the Victorian Academy of Teaching and Leadership will open in 2022, and you can see the diagram on the screen here at the moment. This is the cross-section of a building in the centre of Melbourne, which will house the Academy from January next year. There'll also be 7 regional locations around the state of Victoria offering the same programs. So the purpose of the Victorian Academy, the Academy, is to design and deliver cross-sectoral teaching and leadership programs. So those are programs which work across primary, secondary, specialist settings, Catholic, independent and government schools. And the intent is for this to be a truly cross-sectoral approach to connect teachers and to connect educational leaders in all school settings to work on the really important work of creating great teaching cultures and environments and experiences for people. Also work on publishing research and supporting evidence decisions. We know that's a really important part of the work that these type of organisations can do to help connect teachers and classrooms to evidence-based decision making to help them improve what is happening in classes. And the Academy will also influence and advocate for evidence-informed leadership practices. As I mentioned, this will exist across 7 different locations across Victoria. Within the Academy, the flagship program is the Teaching Excellence Program. In 2022, that'll be offered to 250 teachers, and in 2023 and beyond to 500 teachers per year. So you can see very quickly through the scale of the program, after a few years, there'll be thousands of people who've been exposed to this program. And it's a program that, as we'll discuss in a moment, is for our high ability teachers, our best teachers and leaders in our schools. And that's a really interesting way to think about professional learning. So what do our best teachers do? First thing they do is they know the discipline that they're working in. They know the misconceptions that young people can form within that discipline area, whether it's in science or literacy or early years numeracy or history. Teachers will know the key elements to the pedagogical and curriculum approaches that are built around their discipline and how to engage young people in being interested in and fascinated by the things within that particular discipline. So our best teachers have really deep knowledge of the disciplinary specific knowledge that they're conveying and engaging with our young people. They also understand how learning works and the science of learning. So that when they're taking their disciplinary knowledge, it's the disciplinary knowledge that sits around literacy, for example, looks very different for a 5-year-old than it does for a 15-year-old. Part of that's about cognitive development of the young people. It's also about the ways learning works differently for different ages and stages of children's development. So when our best teachers know how learning works and they can take their deep knowledge of the discipline, they can apply it flexibly and cleverly to the needs of the children that they have in front of them because they understand the science of how learning works. They then select and apply responsive pedagogies. So when we think about responsive pedagogies in this sense, it's where teachers take their deep disciplinary knowledge and their understanding of the discipline content and the curriculum and the pedagogies attached to the discipline. They connect it to understanding how learning happens for young people. And then they apply selective and select responsive pedagogies that adapt to the class that they have or the child that they have in front of them, because we know that every child will need to interact differently with the content we provide, and every class and every school will have its own contextual situations. A strategy that works one year might not work the next year. A strategy that works for one child won't work for the next child. A strategy for one class won't necessarily work for the class down the road. So our best teachers know their discipline, they understand the science of how learning works, and then they're able to apply responsive pedagogies to meet the needs of the children in the classes that they're working with. So you can see that's conceptually simple, but in practice a really difficult, complex part of the work that teachers do every day. The Teaching Excellence program then is a way to work across sectors with our teachers that are doing that kind of work in their classrooms every day. These are teachers that will be recommended by their principals and their peers, and they'll apply to be part of the program and to be recognised as experts in their field, the people that are able to do that kind of work that we've just described previously. So the Teaching Excellence program is a flagship cross-sectoral program working across Victorian education sectors. It's about helping teachers to deepen their existing excellent practice. It'll advance professional expertise and practice through disciplinary knowledge, the science of learning, the contemporary responsive pedagogies that we've talked about already. It'll allow our highest performing teachers to continue to explore and test new and emerging practices. Really importantly, to do that with each other, because the Teaching Excellence program is about networking and interconnecting these high performing teachers across schools and across sectors so that they can learn from each other and with each other to improve and continue to work on the deepening of their practice. All of this revolves around an idea of professional inquiry and practitioner-led inquiry. So where teachers in their communities, they're working together, identify areas that they're working on with expert input through masterclasses and conferences that are part of the Teaching Excellence program. They begin to develop a practitioner inquiry which responds to the needs of the children that they're working with, and that allows them to think and plan flexibly, to engage in dialogic interaction with their peers and also with the students in their classrooms around the way they're thinking about their practice and the way that practice unfolds in their classrooms, to do critical reflection and to analyse and evaluate the impact of their work. So we can see the expectations in the Teaching Excellence program are that teachers engaged in the program are already highly proficient, great teachers and great thinkers about the way they do their curriculum and their professional practice. Because we need those teachers coming into this program to already be high performing, which is why this particular program is a little bit different than the way professional learning is sometimes thought about, and why it's an interesting thing for us to talk about at the EduTech conference in 2021. So why do we focus on highly skilled teachers? The reason is because the typical model of professional learning can begin with a deficit-based assumption that there are deficits in knowledge or competence or skills or understanding that teachers have, that they have a gap in their knowledge about a particular subject area. that they have a deficiency in their competence with a particular approach, that they have a skill that they need to learn that they don't have in classroom management or in curriculum design, or that there's a lack of understanding of the interconnection between different parts of the work, for example. And when we talk about or think about that typical professional learning model, there's that, I like to think of it as like an ambulance approach. We've identified a gap or a problem, we send in the ambulance, the paramedics, they come, they fix the problem, they tip in the medical solution and they fix the gap, and then the professional learning flies off again. And that's really helpful for people where there is a gap or a deficiency or a loss of knowledge or information or a need for something particular. But when we're talking about our highest performing teachers, they're the teachers that already have these key knowledge items, and they have high levels of competence and skill, and they understand the interconnections between the work. Obviously, there'll always be new things in education, and everybody will need the ambulance to come along and help them with the new things. But when we're thinking about our highest performing teachers, we need to think about how they're engaging in their work a little bit differently, and how they're engaging in professional learning differently. So we think about the production of interconnections of networks, and how we build sophistication in the practice for these teachers. So we're thinking there not about the ambulance driving in to put in place a very quick solution. We're thinking about the pathway that the teacher is creating for themselves in response to expert input and their work with their peers. So that's why this program focuses a little bit differently on highly skilled teachers. Within the Teaching Excellence program, we divide into disciplines for our first 250 and then eventually our 500 participants in the program each year. And we look at those discipline areas in science, mathematics, health and PE, English, the arts, humanities, languages, and technology. And we do that in the primary sector, secondary sector, and for special school settings as well. So whether you're working on the science curriculum in grade 3 or at year 12 chemistry, we're thinking about the ways that disciplinary specific knowledge in science or literacy is applied in different contexts and in really specific domain-specific ways, and that there are domain or discipline-specific skills and knowledge that go along with the provision of the educational experience for the young people we're working with. Sitting alongside that then is our responsive pedagogies. Those are engaging learners, critical and creative thinking, metacognition, differentiation, formative assessment, student agency, interpersonal communication, applied learning, and digital technologies. I'll come back to talk about those in relation to EduTech in a moment. Really importantly, those responsive pedagogies are the way a teacher working in the arts or in languages or in mathematics can respond to the needs of their children in their classrooms. So where they have that expert, deep knowledge of their discipline, and they have expert knowledge and understanding of the science of learning and how learning works, they then apply these responsive pedagogies to meet the needs of the children in front of them and their particular needs at that time, which, as I mentioned earlier, can change from student to student, class to class, and year to year. We look then within the Teaching Excellence program on the right-hand side of the screen in the conferences and masterclasses that these teachers will be engaged in, the practitioner inquiry they'll work through, and the teaching excellence learning communities that they'll be engaged in. This is where we're taking these highest performing teachers, connecting them with each other through teaching excellence learning communities focused on the disciplines, and then bringing in a practitioner-led inquiry where these teachers are leading and working on the inquiry together collaboratively, but also in response to what's happening in their classrooms. Coming alongside that, underpinning that, if you like, are the dispositions that these excellent teachers already have and need to continue to develop and refine through this program. These dispositions of being attentive, being critical thinking, their interpersonal communication skills, and their connection making and self-reflection. Through those dispositions of the work that they're doing, they'll understand and be able to deepen the network. So how does this relate to education technologies? Well, if we think about the disciplines, the arts, English, health, PE, humanities, etc., there are existing discipline-specific applications and approaches that are applied in schools across the world in relation to these discipline-specific areas. So in the arts, we know that there are digital art platforms that are used in a range of schools, and there's a range of really well-established mechanisms and approaches to using education technologies in the art classroom, just as there is in languages or science. We know that there are very well-established mechanisms to connect education technologies through the disciplines. When we think about responsive pedagogies, though, there's perhaps an open space for innovative uses of education technology. If we think about applied learning, for example, and we're talking about taking learning in science and applying it to real-life contexts, how we do that in real-life contexts that are related to technology and the digital world is pretty clear, because we can apply educational technologies to developing apps and teaching coding and so on. But if the applied learning is about coastal erosion, for example, how can we build in education technologies through the geography and humanities curriculum that allows us to use technologies to help young people and teachers engage in applying the learning? Similarly with critical and creative thinking, now there are a number of education technology solutions that work on critical and creative thinking through different schemas and mind mapping and kinds of programs that help young people think through their thinking and be creative or critical in their thinking. But there's definitely an open space for more work in that area. In terms of differentiation, this is a really interesting one for education technologies, because differentiation is the ability to take the content from within the discipline and to use your understanding of where children are at in your classrooms to apply or to open up that discipline-specific curriculum and information at a level that's appropriate for the young person, which can look different from student to student, class to class. How we do that through technology and enable that work to happen easily for teachers is a really open space for development, because its differentiation can be labour intensive. So how can we use education technologies to make that simple? There are ways that's happening in a number of schools. What are other ways we can think about that deepening? Digital technologies obviously are pretty easy for education technologies to respond to in this domain. But if we think about engaging learners, if we think about formative assessment, if we think about interpersonal communication and metacognition, what are the mechanisms for educational technologies to get in and support teachers around these responsive pedagogies? If we take formative assessment as an example, if formative assessment is simply providing a test, then it's very easy for education technologies to be able to provide the pre-test and provide the post-test and identify how much students have grown in between times. But if formative assessment is ongoing and about the interconnection between the teacher and the young person and their adults that are helping them understand their learning, how can that be more dynamic than a simple pre-test, post-test type of formative assessment mechanism? If we're talking about student agency as well, what are the mechanisms through which education technologies can help students have a voice in their learning and to direct the applications of the approaches that they're learning in their classes? So that brings us to an opportunity for questions. I'm happy to receive them by email or contact me any other way you'd like. Professional learning for our best teachers is a journey worth taking, and I hope everyone's happy to jump on board with it. Thank you very much for your time today, and best of luck for the rest of the EduTech conference for 2021. Hope you enjoy all the presenters that you're engaging with. Thanks very much.